Welcome to 6th grade math. Minilab. Use a model to determine which fraction is greater, 3/5 or 7/10. So step 1, draw a rectangle and shade 3/5 of it. So there's our rectangle, broken it up into fifths, and we're going to shade in 3 of them. Step 2, draw another rectangle that is the same size and shade 7/10 of it. So it's the same size and it's broken up into into tenths, and we're going to shade 7/10. Which fraction is greater? 7/10. Use a model to determine which fraction is greater, 1/2 or 3/7. You may have an idea right off the bat, just based on the numbers, which one's greater, but let's look at it in terms of a model. So draw a rectangle and shade 1/2 of it. So there's a rectangle split into halves, and we'll shade 1/2. And then we'll draw another rectangle that is the same size and shade 3/7 of it. So this rectangle is divided into sevenths. We'll shade 3. And 1/2 is larger than 3/7. Now you may have noticed that earlier, just because we know that half of 7 is 3.5, so we knew that 3/7 was going to be less than a half. Use a model to determine which fraction is greater, 1/6 or 2/9. So we'll draw a rectangle. We're going to divide it into sixths, and we have 1/6. And now we're going to draw a rectangle that is the same size and shade 2/9. So this rectangle is broken up into ninths. We'll shade 2/9, and you can see that 2/9 is a little bit larger than 1/6. Use a model to determine which fraction is greater, 3/8 or 4/7. You might have an idea right off the bat with this one as well. Let's go through the process. Draw a rectangle and shade 3/8 of it. So there's our rectangle divided into eighths. We'll shade 3 of them. And then draw another rectangle that is the same size. And we're going to draw a rectangle same size. It's divided into sevenths. And we'll shade 4 of those. And clearly 4/7 is larger than 3/8. Now, if we go back to the original question, 3/8 or 4/7, what did we know about that? 3 is less than half of 8, right? Half of 8 is 4. So we knew that one was going to be less than half. And half of 7 is 3.5, and 4 is greater than 3.5. So we would have known if we put it in those terms ahead of time that 4/7 was going to be larger than 3/8, because 4/7 is larger than a half and 3/8 is smaller than a half. There must be an easier way to compare fractions than drawing models every time. There is. And to compare two fractions without using models, you can write them as fractions with the same common denominator. So a common denominator is a common multiple, remember those from last class, of the denominators of two or more fractions. So the least common denominator, known as LCD, least common denominator, is the least common multiple of the denominators. So it's just the least common multiple in the denominator of a fraction. We will use the LCD to compare fractions. Compare two fractions. Follow these steps to compare two fractions. 1. Find the least common denominator, or LCD, of the fractions. That is, find the least common multiple of the denominators. Least common multiple is LCM. Write an equivalent fraction for each fraction using the LCD. Then compare the numerators. So, compare fractions and mixed numbers. Replace each shaded area with a less than, greater than, or equal to make a true sentence. 5/8, 7/12. Step 1. The least common multiple of the denominators, 8 and 12, is 24, so the LCD is 24. Step 2. Write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 24 for each fraction. So 5/8 equals 8 times 3 is 24, so 5 times 3 is 15/24. And then we have 7/12, and we know that 12 goes into 24 twice. So 2 times 12 is 24. 2 times 7 is 14. Step 3, 15/24 is greater than 14/24, since 15 is greater than 14. So 5/8 is greater than 7/12. Scaffolding questions. LCM is the least common multiple. LCD is the least common denominator. What does least common multiple, or LCM, mean? It's the smallest number other than 0 that is a multiple of 2 or more numbers. And we learned that in the last lesson. What is the LCM of 2 and 8? 8, right? It can't be lower than 8 because 8 is the least common multiple of 2 and 8 has to be at least 8. What is a denominator? It is the bottom part of a fraction, and it tells the total number of parts. So it's actually the whole. So that's why it says the total number of parts. And what do you think least common denominator means? So we know what least common multiple means. We know what the denominator is. What do you think the least common denominator is? It is the smallest number, other than 0, that is a multiple of 2 or more denominators. And why do answers above state the smallest non-zero number as the least common multiple? 0 is a multiple of all numbers. Negative numbers are also multiples of numbers. So which one is bigger, 3.5 or 3 1/4? Since the whole numbers are the same, compare 1/2 and 1/4. Step 1, the least common multiple of the denominators, 2 and 4, is 4. So the LCD is 4. Step 2, write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 4 for each fraction. So 1/2, we know 2 will go into 4 twice, so 2 times 2 is 4. That gets us the LCD for the least common denominator in the denominator for this number. And then 1 times 2 gives us a numerator of 2. So we have 2/4, and 1/4 is already done for us. So I'll do math times 1 just to show that we did something, but it's just the same, right? So we have 2/4 is greater than 1/4. So 3.5 is greater than 3 1/4. Check. If we graph 3.5 and 3 1/4 on a number line, since 4 is the least common denominator, separate the number line from 3 to 4 into 4 equal parts. So 3 2/4, 3 1/4. We know that numbers on the right side of the number line are larger than numbers on the left side. So 3 2/4 is greater than 3 1/4. And that just illustrates that as we move to the right on a number line, the numbers get bigger. So the cone gets bigger to visualize the numbers getting bigger. Check your progress. 2/3 and 4/9. Step 1, the least common multiple of denominators 3 and 9 is 9. So the LCD is 9. Write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 9 for each fraction. So we know 3 will go into 9 3 times. So if we multiply the denominator 3 times 3, we get 9. The numerator 2 times 3, we get 6. 4/9 already has a denominator of 9. So we'll multiply it by 1. We get 4/9. Step 3, 6/9 is greater than 4/9 because 6 is greater than 4. So 2/3 is greater than 4/9 because remember 2/3 was the original number that became 6/9. Check your progress. 5/12 and 7/8. Step 1, the least common multiple of the denominators 8 and 12 is 24. So the LCD is 24. We're going to write an equivalent fraction with denominator of 24 for each fraction. So 12 will go into 24 twice. So 12 times 2 is 24. 5 times 2 is 10. And then we have 7/8. So 8 will go into 24 3 times. And so 7 times 3 is 21. 21 24ths is greater than 10 24ths because the numerator 21 is greater than the numerator of 10. So we know that 7/8 is greater than 5/12. 4 1/6 and 4 5/18. Since the whole numbers are the same, 4, we're just going to compare the fractional part of the mixed numbers. So 1/6 and 5/18. In step 1, the least common multiple of the denominators 6 and 18 is 18. So the least common denominator is 18. And we are going to write equivalent fractions with a denominator of 18 for each fraction. So 6 will go into 18 3 times. So 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 1 is 3. And 5/18 already has our least common denominator of 18. So we multiply that by 1. We get 5/18. And you have to really do the multiplication on the second one. You don't. I'm just showing you visually that it's the same. So 5/18 is greater than 3/18 because 5 is greater than 3. So 4 1/6. Actually, so 4 5/18 is greater than 4 1/6. Order fractions. So we're going to order the fractions 1/2, 9/14, 3/4, and 5/7 from least to greatest. So this gets a little more complicated because instead of 2 fractions that we now have to find the least common denominator for, there are now 4. So let's break it down. Find the LCD. 2, 7, and 14 all go into 14 evenly, but 4 won't go into 14 evenly. So we're very, very close to a common denominator, but not quite, right? So look at the next multiple of the largest number, 14. That's going to be the hardest one to get into another common multiple. But we know that 2 and 7 both go into 14. So whatever 14 goes into, 2 and 7 are also going to. So that's why we're going to look at, will 4 go into 28? Because that's the one that's going to be hard. And 28 is the least common multiple of 2, 4, 7, and 14. So does the LCD. And we know that 4 times 7 is 28. So that works. And rewrite each fraction with a denominator of 28. So 1/2. 2 will go into 28 14 times. So we get 28. And then 14 times 1 is 14 28ths. And then for 3/4, 4 will go into 28 7 times. So we get 28 in the denominator, and 7 times 3 is 21 in the numerator. And then 9/14, 14 goes into 28 twice. So we get 28, and 9 times 2 is 18. And then 5 times 7, 7 will go into 28 4 times. 7 times 4 is 28. 5 times 4 is 20. So now we need to place these in order. So we get from least to greatest 14 28, 18 28, 20 28, and 21 28. And then if we put them back to their original form and list them in order, that's what they will come up with. Check your progress. 1/2, 5/6, 2/3, and 3/5. So we need to find some common denominator. And since 5 is one of them, we know that the ending has to be 5 or 0, right? Because any multiple of 5 is going to end in 5 or 0. But multiples of 2, 6, and 3 also end in 5 or 0. Well, since 2 and 6 are even numbers, we know the LCD has to end in 0 because 5 is not even, so 2 and 6 won't go into 5. So that very quickly gets us down to has to end in a 0. It won't all be that easy, but sometimes they can be with a little bit of deduction. And then 30 is the least common multiple of 2, 6, 3, and 5. So 30 is the LCD. So we could have gone, okay, is 10? No, because 6 won't go into 10. 3 won't go into 10. Is 20? No, because 6 and 3 won't go into 20. So 30, yeah, 2 will go into 30. 6 will go into 30 5 times. 3 will go into 30 10 times. So we know that's the lowest common denominator. So we're going to rewrite each fraction with a denominator of 30. So 1/2 goes in, so 2 goes into 30 15 times. Then we multiply the numerator by 15, we get 15/30. 6 will go into 30 5 times. So 6 times 5 is 30. Then we multiply the numerator by 5, we get 25/30. 2/3. 3 will go into 30 10 times. So denominator is 30. And 2 will go, 2 times 10 is a numerator of 20. And then 3/5, 5 will go into 30 6 times. So 6 times 5 gives us a denominator of 30. And 6 times 3 gives us a numerator of 18. So now we have to place these in order from least to greatest. And we get 15/30, 18/30, 20/30, and 25/30. And then if we convert those back to their original, that's what order they're in. Check your progress. So we get 4/5, 3/4, 2/5, and 1/4. Find the LCD. Since 5 is one of the denominators, we know the LCD has to end in 5 or 0. And actually 5 is 2 of them, correct? And since we know 4 is an even number, we know it can't end in 5, so it has to end in 0. So the lowest common denominator possible one is 10, but 4 will not go into 10 evenly, so we look at 20. 4 will go into 20 evenly, so we'll rewrite each fraction with a denominator of 20. 4/5, 5 will go into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20, and then 4 times 4 is 16 in the numerator. 3/4, 4 will go into 20 5 times, which gives us a denominator of 20, and 3 times 5 gives us a numerator of 15. And then 2/5, 5 will go into 20 4 times, which gives us a denominator of 20, and 2 times 4 is 8 for a numerator of 8. And then 1/4, 4 goes into 20 5 times, so 5 times 1 is 5 in the numerator. We place these in order from least to greatest: 5/20, 8/20, 15/20, 16/20, and then we convert them back to their original fractions, their equivalent fractions, and put them in order from least to greatest in that form. Check your progress. We're going to order the mixed numbers from least to greatest. So find the LCD. And remember, we only have to worry about the fraction part of these mixed numbers right now because all of the whole numbers are 4. So once again, 5 is one of the denominators. So we know that it has to end in 5 or 0. And 6 is an even number, and we know that no multiple of 6 ends in 5. So we know that our multiple, our least common multiple, or least common denominator, is going to end in 0. And we know 6 won't go into 10 evenly, 6 won't go into 20 evenly, but 6 will go into 30 evenly, and 3 will also go into 30 evenly. So our least common denominator is 30. And we're just going to leave the 4 to the side right now, as I mentioned earlier, and we're going to create equivalent fractions with a denominator of 30. So 6 will go into 30 5 times. 6 times 5, it gives us a denominator of 30. 5 times 5 gives us a numerator of 25. 3 will go into 30 10 times. So 3 times 10 gives us a denominator of 30. And 2 times 10 gives us a numerator of 20. 5 times 6 gives us a denominator of 30. 3 times 6 gives us a numerator of 18. 5 times 6 gives us a denominator of 30. And 6 times 1 gives us a numerator of 6. So now let's put those in order from least to greatest. We get 6/30, 18/30, 20/30, and 25/30. And now we will put the 4s back on and convert them back to their equivalent fractions that we started with. And they are now in order from least to greatest in their original form. Test example. The fraction of Earth covered by each ocean is shown in the table. Which ocean covers the least amount of Earth? So the Arctic is 1/50th, the Atlantic is 1/5, the Indian is 7/50th, and the Pacific is 3/10. So the Arctic Ocean, Atlantic, Indian, Pacific. Those are our choices. And we need to compare the fractions. and then solve the item. So we're going to rewrite the fractions with the LCD of 50. Why is it 50? Well, it can't be smaller than 50 because two of them already have a denominator of 50. And 5 will go into 50 evenly, and so will 10. So that makes it easy for us to choose 50 for an LCD. So we have 1/50th. 1 times 50 is 50, and then 1 times 1 in the numerator. And 1/5. 5 times 10 gives us a denominator of 50. 1 times 10 gives us a numerator of 10. We have another one with a denominator of 50 already, so we'll just multiply that by 1, and we end up with the same fraction of 7/50ths. And then we have 3/10. 10 times 5 gives us a denominator of 50. 3 times 5 gives us a numerator of 15. So 1/50th is the least fraction, and the answer is A. Check your progress. Each day, Kayla walks 1/3 mile, Nora walks 1/6 mile, and Mercedes walks 4/5 mile. Which list shows these distances in order from least to greatest? So we need to compare the fractions, and we need to rewrite the fractions with an LCD, which in this case is 30. And we know that because 5 ends in 5 or 0. 6 has to end in 0 because it can't end, no multiple of 6 ends in a 5. So then we have to find one that 3 equals as well. So if we look at the smallest possible common multiple that ends in 0, that's 10. 6 will not go into 10 evenly. 6 will not go into 20 evenly. 6 will go into 30 evenly. And 3 will go into 30 evenly as well. So 1/3. So 3 times 10 equals 30 in the denominator. 1 times 10 gives us 10 in the numerator. 6 times 5 gives us 30 in the denominator. 1 times 5 gives us 5 in the numerator. And then 5 times 6 gives us 30 in the denominator. And 4 times 6 gives us 24 in the numerator. So now we can order these from least to greatest. We get 5/30th, 10/30th, and 24/30th. So if we reorganize those 1/6, 1/3, and 4/5, we put them back to their original equivalent fractions. The answer is J. Additional examples: compare fractions and mixed numbers. Replace the shaded area with less than, greater than, or equal to make a true sentence. 8/21 and 3/7. What is the LCD? It's 21. So if we know that if we make 3/7 with an LCD of 21, it's going to be 3 times 7 to get 21. So 3 times 3 is 9 over 21, and that's greater than 8 over 21. 2 1/3 and 2 2/6. What is the LCD? 6. So if we make 3 equal to 6, we're going to multiply it by 2 to get 6 in the denominator, and then we'll have to multiply 1 times 2 to get 2 in the numerator. So we will end up with two equal fractions. Compare the fractions 2/3, 4/5, 8/15, and 3/5 from least to greatest. What is the LCD? 15, right? We know there's 2 5s, and we know those have to end in 5 or 0. We know that 3 won't go into a multiple with ends in 0 evenly. So we have, I apologize. But it won't go into 10. So anyway, LCD is 15. And if we multiply all of those out, we have the equivalent fractions right there. And then if we order them from least to greatest, we have 8/15, 9/15, 10/15, and 12/15. And then if we restate them as their original fractions, that's the order. According to the table, how is most land in the United States used? So we have 4 options. One of them being 2 of them are equal. So let's look at this. Read the item. You need to compare the fractions. To solve the item, we need to rewrite the LCD. So there is one denominator that's 100, so it can't be less than that. Will 4 go into 100? Yep, 25 times. Will 10 go into 100? Yes, 10 times. And 50 will go into 100 twice. So we can create equivalent fractions. So we have 19 over 100. We have 25 over 100, 30 over 100, and 26 over 100. So the answer is C, forest and woodlands is the greatest amount of land. There's your homework. Go to Google Classroom to submit it.